My first guest tonight issued a very clear statement about today's court proceedings, simply stating, quote, "Someone make it stop." He's talking about the seemingly endless parade of Albany elected officials felled by public corruption charges. Blair Horner is the legislative director for the New York Public Interest Research Group, better known to one and all as NYPIRG. Thanks very much for your time, Blair.
Thanks for having me, Liz.
Okay, so make it stop. Will it ever? I feel like 15 years for you. It's been, I don't want to say how long, more than that.
I mean, it's crazy. I mean, and it seems to be accelerating instead of decelerating. It's almost, you feel like every month there's a new scandal or conviction afflicting Albany. And you just hope at some point that that Albany hits a tipping point where they'll start going the other way. But really, I feel like I want to open the window and scream out the window that I'm mad as hell and I'm not going to take it anymore. I mean, it's really a depressing series of scandals.
You just channeled Carl Palladino. You know that, right? Okay.
Well, actually, Howard Beale.
Right,
Liz.
channeling Carl Palladino. Here's the thing, though. One might argue, do you think one might argue, that with all of this stuff actually accelerating, that it's a good thing, that things have actually been so bad for so long, and now people are finally paying attention and bringing people who are corrupt to justice?
Well, I guess the good news is the federal government is paying more attention to New York.
Right.
It's the FBI who actually has to police, apparently, the state of New York. And that's the part that doesn't make any sense. We're currently paying for a ethics oversight series of institutions in New York, and they're apparently not doing their job because it takes the FBI to come in and to find instances of corruption. That's totally unacceptable. New Yorkers should demand better.
You have called for a special session sometime between now and December 31st for ethics reform to be brought up again. The last time we were here was actually almost a year ago, February of last year, and or February of this year, but almost a year ago, when Governor Patterson vetoed a reform bill because he said it didn't go far enough.
Well, you know, the governor, just to go back the clock a little bit to January, the governor made the central message of his State of the State address the need for ethics reform. The legislature, without the governor's help, developed a bill. The governor vetoed it, saying it needed to be stronger, and then dropped the issue. So here we are, all of these months later, he hasn't done anything. So we believe that on the way out, the governor should fulfill his promise to make meaningful ethics reform happen in the state of New York, as compared to just dropping it because he seemingly lost interest.
You know, and I got to say, though, I'm not convinced that that's going to happen, although the Senate is going to be back in session tomorrow. I'm not so sure that the Assembly is going to be back anytime soon. But Governor-elect Andrew Cuomo did at one point, very briefly, one story, bring up the possibility of a Moreland Commission. Do you remember that?
That's right. That's right, he did. Yes.
And what would that entail? We should mention also that you worked for Andrew Cuomo when he was Attorney General, but do you think that he might bring up a Moreland Commission, and what would that mean?
Well, a Moreland Act Commission, or power is vested in the governor to basically initiate investigations. He can create a commission that investigates potential corruption or other misdeeds. This entity would have power to subpoena, could collect records, and then advise the appropriate bodies on what should be done. My sense was, when he said it, is that he was saber-rattling. It was really in the context that he wanted an ethics bill to pass, and if that didn't happen, he might be interested in using a Moreland Act Commission. I think that, to me, it seems to me, basing on what happened earlier this year, that the legislature wants to do an ethics bill, and it wants the leadership of the governor to make the deal happen. If it's not the current governor, then we certainly hope it'll be the next one.
Well, didn't actually Mario Cuomo have a Moreland Act Commission?
Yes, he convened one to look at corruption that was occurring at New York State, and it started actually in New York City, but also to look more broadly at state issues. Was known as the FERIC Commission. Really, the technical name was the Commission on Public Integrity. But the FERIC Act Commission put out a number of reports, about 20 reports, looking at all aspects of the need for reform in New York. Very little happened, sadly, as a result of that. But there were the beginnings of the state's ethics laws were passed around the same time.
Now, the other thing that you called for was for the Attorney General. I note that you didn't call anybody out by name per se, except for Governor Patterson, who of course would be responsible for calling a special session. But the Attorney General could be doing a complete overhaul of nonprofits, which is part of what tripped up Vincent Leibel, the former senator. And you would like that to see that happen.
Well, the thing that was sort of unique about what was going on here was it appears that Senator Leibel was using his relationships with not-for-profits in his area as a way to enrich himself. Now, there have been other examples of legislators being involved in not-for-profits that have led to controversy, but this is the first time, at least that I can think of, where it was connected to actually a conviction. And the Attorney General has the authority over all charities and not-for-profits in the state that are registered with the Attorney General, and typically the groups that receive government money are among them. So it seems to me that the Attorney General should use his resources to examine, to see if there are other relationships that exist that are similar to this one, and to investigate to see that there's no wrongdoing going on.
Well, the Attorney General-elect, Eric Schneiderman, has said that he's actually going to make a focus out of rooting out public corruption, even when the trail leads to his soon-to-be former colleagues in the state legislature, which was something that people questioned his ability to do during the general election and the primary. But other people suggested that what the Attorney General's office really needs is more power. Do you agree with that?
Well, I think in this particular narrow case, I think the Attorney General has the power to look at the charities and to do an examination of how they're acting and whether or not lawmakers are involved with them and if there's any wrongdoing going on. The Attorney General has a lot of authority right now. I mean, Attorney General Cuomo's Hevesi investigation was all conducted within the existing framework of the authority of the Attorney General. There are areas where the Attorney General could get more involved in terms of investigations into, for example, campaign finance violations or ethics or lobbying violations where the Attorney General has to wait for a referral from those agencies. Right. You could knock down the referral barrier. The Attorney General has a lot of authority, and the current one has done a lot on these areas.
Well, and also, however, though, if you want to have the ability to issue subpoenas in public corruption cases, you need to be asked by the governor to do so. Is that not correct?
That's right.
Right.
That's right. And that's exactly right. Yes. I mean, certainly the Attorney General could use more authority to get involved in these areas, but he does have a lot of authority, particularly looking at charities. And that's what was interesting about the Leibel case. And I think the Attorney General should use their vast existing authorities, his existing authority, to examine charities and to see if there's any other nexes that lead to wrongdoing.
Well, certainly everybody ran on reform this year, so we shall see if they stick to it. And I'll be watching. I know you will be, too. I want to thank you very much, Blair Horner of NYPIRG.
Thanks for having me.